What do you do if your boss calls you and says, we need to quickly pull together next quarter's rate card? What data do you need, and how do you even go about approaching this? Because the temptation in a situation like this is to jump in and quickly start making changes based on the issue that generated the request. Was it a customer that was lost due to poor pricing? Was there news in the press about some competitor who made significant price reductions? And that would be a mistake, because in a situation where you are under the gun, you need to focus on what really moves the needle. I've talked in other videos about the importance of structuring the rate card correctly, and at times it can be challenging to create a rate card from scratch. But today I'm going to assume that the rate card is already in place and has largely the right structure and the right products in place, and so we don't need to start from first principles. Instead, we need to focus on three questions. One, how has the current rate card performed? Two, what is changing externally with either the market, our customer, or our competitors? And thirdly, what is changing internally, for example, with things like product launches? All right, so first, question one. We need to look at how the rate card has been performing, and this is largely a backward looking exercise. And so you need to look at actual data plus internal experience. You need to look at the data associated with price realization and how it's trending. You need to look at overall revenue. You need to look at the discounting, sell through, product performance, deal review feedback, and other internal reporting. This sounds like a lot. Hopefully, it's the kind of information that you have now established in your dashboard as a yield manager in your company. And so the process is going through and thoughtfully thinking about what you're seeing in this report. The other thing that goes without saying, if you're going to look at how the rate card has performed, is you need the current rate card. And again, if you are the yield manager or pricing manager in charge of this process, hopefully you know where to find it. The other thing to think about when you're looking at how the rate card has performed is things like which dimensions are most important. I've done other videos before talking about how sell-through is often an overused overused signal in a pricing analysis, particularly if there are cases where the demand is low. And so the sales team starts to put pressure on and say, hey, we've got low sell-through, we need to lower the pricing. And that's often a mistake. However, you do still need to understand sell-through, particularly if you're doing a rate card refresh, and because you need to understand how the projections might impact your business. And there is some asymmetry here. While a low sell-through doesn't necessarily mean that you should lower your prices, if you have a high sell-through and you're starting to run out of inventory, it is a signal that you may have to start thinking about raising your prices, particularly if you're going to squeeze out the last of your optimization. Another component that you need to look at is the deal review requests that you're getting into your deal desk. What are those requests? How many are getting approved? And for when you approve those deals, how many are significantly below the rate card price? Because all of these things are signals that maybe the rate card that you put in place isn't working as well as what you hoped. You need sales and advertiser input on is the current rate card working. Again, this is hopefully something that you are capturing as part of your normal course of business, but you are trying to get feedback from the advertisers via your sales channel to distill what your sales team and your advertisers are saying are the current pain points. And you're not going to be able to satisfy all of these pain points with a rate card update, especially if the feedback is our prices are too high, or our customers hate that we only allow them to buy if they buy the bundle of these two products together. The key is to catalog the issues and the themes so that you know how to respond. And since we're assessing how the rate card performed, the other thing that you need to look at associated with this first question is overall revenue. Were you able to achieve the revenue goals that you set out using the rate card that you have in place? And so an ideal state from this first answering this first question is that the rate card is being taken seriously, that the sell-through expectations are coming in alignment with how you planned, and that the discounting off of the rate card also aligns with your process and with your predictions. The second major question that you need to think about when you're going through a rate card update is what is changing externally. In particular, is the market changing? What are sales and customers seeing? What are competitors doing? What is happening with the economics of budgets, economic conditions, buying behavior, changing industry practices? So again, sales and customer feedback can be incredibly important here. And obviously this is related to the question of how is the rate card performing, but you're trying to get something different here. You're trying to get at what is changing in the last year or changing in the current moment that your demand channel has access to. So feedback in this dimension might be along the lines of, when our competitor launched their new product, we noticed a decrease across most of our legacy products. Or it may be macroeconomic, along the lines of things like customers are worried about a potential recession and aren't spending the way that they were last year. At this stage, to answer this question, if you can get your hands on any industry reports that talk about changing market dynamics, particularly related to price, that's invaluable. Now to the third major question that you need to address as you're going through this rate card update. What is changing internally? What is your company changing that may influence what you need to represent on your rate card? So it might be new products, it might be new inventory that's becoming available, either because you changed your app or changed your website. It might be partnerships, it might be improved measurement capabilities, it might be changes to your sales strategy. These are all things that you need to have visibility into, and all things that would potentially change how you would think about the prices that you're going to put on your rate card. So significant internal changes are things that may include new product introductions. It may be the launch of a new product. It might be the launch of a new consumer application or a new website that is expected to drive a lot of traffic and in turn generate a lot of new ads. And here you want to capture anything that may impact supply and demand dynamics. And so once you have all of this data, because I've listed a lot, what do you do? Again, the answer is not jump in to start changing prices. You need to articulate what this all means. Without good process, this can get overlooked, and you just start as a good analyst jumping into changing the prices. You need to create the business plan and the list of assumptions, and it gives you a shared understanding of what's going to happen. And this doesn't need to be rocket science. It can be a list of a few bullets, and it can include things like, we expect that demand is going to be largely the same next year. It might include, we expect to have largely the same ad products next year as we do this year. Or it might be, we expect to have better performance on our ad inventory due to new integrations and better measurement services. So often this occurs that you're creating a rate card at around the same time that your ops finance team is creating the plan for the next quarter or for the next financial year. And in this case, the list of assumptions that you could be writing out becomes a little bit circular, because you're listing things that you're assuming as part of the broader business. You want to make sure that your ops within team has signed off and agreed that these assumptions are the right ones. And then once you've listed this all out, you have a few options. Option one, a very valid conclusion that you might come to, is that not much has changed and you can leave the rate card largely as it is. And that is fine. Just make sure that you are doing it because it is still valid and still appropriate, and not because of laziness or because you are overwhelmed by the process. Option 2, you may decide that the structure is good and that some minor changes are all that's needed to pricing, and maybe the addition of a few new products. Or finally, you may have gone through this process, and I started this video by saying we're doing a business as usual update and assuming the same structure. But you may have gone through this process and realized that in fact a significant structural change is needed because either the external market conditions warrant it, your internal business is changing around so much, or you find that the rate card that you had in place that you loved so much is just not working. If so, either check out my other videos on rate card creation or reach out to me directly. At the end of the day, a rate card update isn't just an excuse to reinvent the wheel, nor is it an automatic price bump. It's a deliberate exercise in answering 3 core questions. What happened? What's changing around you? And what's changing within your business? Once you align on these assumptions with finance and with your leadership team, the numbers usually fall in place, whether again it's leave it as it is, make some specific fine tunes, or time for a deeper structural analysis. How often does your team run into these types of problems, and what's the biggest challenge that you run into? Please leave your response in the questions and comments below. I am James Deeker. I am the Yield Doctor. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.